Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you are about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man, and welcome to the conclusion of Marvel May, where I'll be looking at Spider-Man. Yeah, uh, I was going to. I did initially intend to start with Spider-Man, given he was my gateway into uh, into Marvel as a storytelling company, primarily through the uh, primarily through the '90s show. However, I thought about it after thinking about it. I thought it would make more sense to start with Captain America because chronology, and partly because I wanted to give myself the time to really do Spider-Man right. Because, as I said, he was my he was my guy back in the day, and very much I think he still holds up in terms of storytelling potential. And I wanted to give myself a little bit more time to really consider how to most effectively fulfill that storytelling potential within a future adaptation. That being said, given Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is, as far as I'm aware, uh, still being aired, it is quite likely that because just because of that, it might take a while for not only for a new Spider-Man show, but for the Marvel animated universe that I've kind of been building over the course of Marvel May to actually get off the ground. But regardless, I wanted to I want to talk about it. And yeah, the same rules apply. I'm going to be talking about three 13 episode seasons and what I think it would take to make those work. And the show, just like pretty much every other show I've talked about, would we'll start within the '60s with an adaptation of Amazing Fantasy. It's been long enough that I think it's worth looking once again. It's worth going back to the origin story and exploring what it is, what it is that makes Peter Parker a noteworthy character aside from his spider-based abilities. And looking into the origin and going back to his origin story is a good way to lay those foundations. And after we get through that one episode of the origin story, I think it's safe to say that from that point forward, the show will be somewhat of a rotating cast. Will showcase a rotating cast of of his many varied villains, because as I mentioned it at least one other time, Spider-Man has the has among the greatest rogues galleries of all of fiction. And I think the villains that would make most sense for this adaptation would be first of all Doctor Octopus, followed by the Green Goblin, followed by the Vulture, followed by Electro. I think Electro could be worth a two-parter actually, because if you think about what he could could actually do, and the fact that he actually has they actually defeated Spider-Man at their on their first encounter. Well, when the two first met. Also, Shocker, more of a more of a wild card, but I nevertheless still see the potential. Given his gauntlets, followed up by Rhino, who yeah, well, we're gonna have to settle on a scale for Rhino because like look at this, yeah, and Mysterio. I think so. Yeah, and at least one of these guys would definitely have a two-parter. However, this show won't just be about how faces off against his villains, even though that's even though that's a sizable part of his legacy of how he, of or of what defines him. The fact that he is very athletic, very agile, and very much thinks on his feet, and uses a lot of uses a lot of quips in order to uh, throws opponents off their game. I think that and I think bringing that to life will make for makes for an interesting makes the character more interesting. But aside from that, like I already said, I want to talk about what makes Peter Parker an interesting character outside of Spider-Man, and that stems also from his relationships, primarily the one with Aunt May, who, for the record, I see Aunt May being less Rosemary Harris and more who played her in the MCU trilogy? Marissa Tomei, yeah. This Aunt May will be less Rosemary Harris, more Marissa Tomei, as in she would be even though this is still a 60s show and therefore people have certain expectations of older women, I nevertheless still see Aunt May kind of bucking the trend a little bit, inspiring a little bit more of a mischievous streak in Peter. But nevertheless, she would still be the somewhat perfect caregiver that she is that she is often portrayed as being, because she wants to because I see her very much as encouraging him not just to do the right thing, but also to, in general, take more initiative with his life. And the second figure that I think is would be most noteworthy or most important within his young life would be Gwen Stacy. By the way, I checked. This image isn't AI, though I did think it could be. And Gwen Stacy in this iteration would be somewhat of a girl next door archetype, even though she she might not actually live next door to Peter. And I think she would be the she would be the pretty girl everyone is after, but she is however she would be primarily differentiated by her diligence, by the fact that she wants to that she is a more traditional do-gooder young girl who who wants to not rock the boat and make herself well known for reasons that are more more honorable, so to speak, like doing good in class, or like finding good people to surround herself with. And I imagine she would find a good person within Peter, and that would also perhaps encourage him to come out of his shell. And I see this season, this first season going, taking place over several years, maybe ideally 10 years, so from 1963 to 1973. And some of you might be thinking, wait, 1973? That sounds familiar. We'll get to that. And because this show will start with them as high schoolers, their families will, their families will come more in the limelight, which includes looking at George Stacy. So who once again in this iteration is a is an NYPD captain, and he more or less actually takes the role of J. Jonah Jameson within this continuity, in that he is an older or gruffer masculine archetype for whom Spider-Man will look up to, or whom Peter will look up to, and who in that sense pushes him or motivates him towards doing the right thing. That being said, J. Jonah Jameson would still be would still perhaps be part of this adaptation, but I imagine him having a more diminished role, simply a more traditional role as Peter's boss within his job as a photojournalist for the Daily Bugle, a job which, for the record, I actually have him not keep for too long, which in turn would mean that J. Jonah Jameson would have another role in which he would become more prominent later on, but we'll get to that later on. However, while I have some, while I think George Stacy would be a positive role model for for Peter in his life, I nevertheless do see him getting getting killed in action at some point during the season by any of the villains previously mentioned. And I do want the ending of the season to be in two parts. The first part will very heavily feature the heavily feature the Green Goblin, and it will be maybe he'll have found out what he'll have found out who Spider-Man's secret identity, and I imagine him potentially targeting all or most of his all or most of his acquaintances, or threatening targeting at least one of them. And the one he and the one that he settles on targeting is, of course, Gwen Stacy. And yeah, this is I'm going to basically reenact this 12th episode, or the second to last episode of the first season, will basically be Amazing 129. Not 129, 121. The night Gwen Stacy dies. And yes, I do want her to die in that. I don't only want her to die, but I want her to die in the same, in the same way that she did in the comic. Because I want Spider-Man to go, to go completely off the rails, because in this, because the last episode of the season will roughly be split into two halves. The first half, with him being going on a revenge rampage of absolutely going against the Green Goblin, hunting him down, and doing his best to just beat him down. Seriously, Spider-Man here is out for blood, out for death. Whether he actually kills the Green Goblin is perhaps up to discussion, though I would prefer he did. And then once he gets the the rage out of his system, he is nevertheless still left distraught, still left broken, because while he has resolved his rage, he still has a lot of pain that he is that he would be dealing with, and and the way in which he wants to deal with that pain is, looks like I didn't have to scroll back up. Never mind. So anyway, as I said, Gwen Stacy dies, Green Goblin gets hunted down, and yeah, Spider-Man no more. That is what that is the point where we're reaching. Peter throws his suit away and decides to walk away from being Spider-Man. May might be able to piece together that something is up with him. Not just the fact that Gwen Stacy died, but still she decides to support him in that moment. And also, I imagine that within this moment, he would decide to quit his job with the Daily Bugle. Season 2 would start a few years later, with Spider-Man now having a job as a as a high school science teacher, because I think that is what I think would really speak to him, and what makes and also the the job that makes the most sense with him, in the idea that he is able to share his primary power, his intellect, with other people, particularly children, and therefore become an in-universe role model. Because again, that is what I think would make most sense for his character, and he would perhaps deal be quite fine within his new quieter life. Yet it becomes quite clear that he is still hiding something, or that he is still hiding from something, running away from something, and that is something that he only gets to confront. Once he's been a high school science teacher for a few years, when there are reports of a villain team up, one that features Electro, Mysterio, Rhino, Shocker, and the Vulture. So yeah, in case you're wondering, this is my, this is my iteration of the Sinister Six that I want them, that I want within this series. And once Peter notices that all of these guys are now back up and running, he decides, okay, this is serious enough. I'm gonna have to once again use my powers, make myself a new suit, and go after these guys because otherwise they're gonna do a lot of damage. And I'm not sure whether this should be a two-parter or a three-parter, but nevertheless, he goes in, he goes out, he gets his suit on, does a little soul searching, goes after them. Maybe loses the first time, but definitely not the second time. And yes, I do want the Sinister Six to work together, rather than in contrast to how it was in the their first appearance, where they even had a different lineup. Because I think the Sinister Six are at their most interesting when they are able to synergize their abilities, and I think this particular combination of the Sinister Six will be able to synergize most effectively. You have you have Toons who can very effectively counter him. Who can effectively counter him in flight. You have Shocker, who can, who's always a little bit of a wild card given his, weaponry. You have the Rhino, who can quite effectively counter him on solid ground, or given his overwhelming strength advantage. He's always he's always a good counter to a lot of what Spider-Man can throw. Then you got Mysterio, who can basically change the battlefield just like that, or at least change change its appearance. In that chaos, that can help the rest of the team do some pull off some interesting stuff. Then you have Electro, who again has some intriguing, overwhelming weaponry. And then you've got Doc Ock, who is the mastermind and coordinator. He can think on his feet, and he has and also his arms, or rather his tentacles, represent a similar decisive advantage that can very effectively counter a lot of what Spider-Man can do. So with these guys in particular, I think he is up to the Spider-Man will be challenged in ways that he has never been challenged before, but I imagine him rising up to the opportunity. And also I imagine that J. Jonah himself, now who might at this point in the in the show be appointed or elected as the mayor of New York, would see this and go, okay, this wall crawling, web slinging menace is back. It's time I took measures against it. And what are the measures he takes against it? Scorpion, because of course. Maybe he'll find Mac Gargan. Maybe he'll find Mac Gargan through regular means, and then as a private detective, and then have him figure out who Spider-Man is. But I imagine Peter would be able to figure out that he is being followed, and that will cause perhaps a little bit of significant amount of resentment in Gargan, making him want to be able to fight Spider-Man on equal footing, and through that desire, and with J. Jonah's backing, I think he would find a way to become the Scorpion, which in turn would open the floodgates for more genetics-based villains, such as the Jackal, who in a first phase would be a physical matchup, for Spider-Man, but who will get a but he'll get a broader role in later on in the season. More on that later. And then there's the Lizard, then there's Sandman, and then there's Hydro Man. Yeah, you can kind of tell. You can kind of tell I started. I started on the '90s Spider-Man because in my mind these guys are kind of interchangeable, even though even though I understand that's not precisely the case, with Sandman being a little bit more, being starting out as a more traditional Thug, but then teetering more with redemption, whereas Hydro Man or Morris Bench kind of not being that. He is just a free spirit, and more precisely, he is a malicious free spirit. But nevertheless, when it comes to combat, I think they would be quite similar, and I think it would make more sense to introduce them here. There might, Spider-Man might also face an iteration of the Sinister Six that that swaps out some of the members from the from the first team with some of the guys that are newly introduced. But really, the main aspect of this season will be, the Clone Saga. This, by the way, is Ben Reilly, who first started out as the Scarlet Spider, a clone of, who started out and a clone of Peter Parker. And don't get me wrong, I'm not gonna go anything too deep into the Clone Saga. It should at most be about half the season. Ideally, actually, just 4 episodes. And it would start with. And we'll start with Ben. Ben perhaps fighting against one of the with Ben as the Scarlet Spider fighting against a one of Spidey's villains who is on a rampage, whoever that may be. Spidey Peter notices that there is another Spider-Man in the city and thinks, okay, that's a little bit suspicious. So he goes out to. He goes out to investigate this the Scarlet Spider. They might have a little back and forth, starting out, and then but then they figure each other out. They figure out that they're both good guys, and they figure out that there is something else going on. There are various duplicates and clones of other figures running around. There could be more Spider people who take on a more direct villainous role. I imagine someone like Kane could be running around. I imagine Scorpina could also be introduced here. Maybe even Lady Octopus could also show up. And these characters would perhaps give the two trouble for a while, but they eventually realize that who the actual threat is, namely Miles Warren, and move on against him. Them and whatever allies they may have been able to gather in the meantime, and they move against Warren's operation, which involves creating clones of superpowered individuals in order to be able to take over the city and carry out wild experiments. Nevertheless, he gets thwarted by the two, who then end up sharing the Spider-Man mantle. Ben Reilly gets to do his own thing as in whatever civilian role that he wants to do, and Peter Parker at the end of this season gets to marry Mary Jane Watson, because I think the married life would suit perhaps this iteration of Peter quite well. And in case you're wondering how it is that they've met and they would have met in this iteration, I kind of see Mary Jane Watson as being someone who Peter would have met while in college, but nothing really came of them, because at the time he was still involved with Gwen and very faithful to her. I would potentially imagine them being them being engaged. Yeah, they were engaged at the time. At the time Green Goblin would have killed her, and and I think he would meet. I think he would meet Mary Jane again. Maybe because she would be part of the drama club that that the school Peter works at. Would organize, and through that work connection, they become close again and end up marrying. And I imagine that this conclusion would be either would perhaps be in the late 70s, but I think the early 80s would work a little bit better. So by now we will have covered roughly 20 years of this guy's life, and he seems to have an overall happy ending. He has a friend with whom he can share not just his identity but his duties. He has a somewhat stable, he also has a somewhat stable family life. He still gets to go on becoming Spider-Man. So what exactly will happen in season 3? Miles Morales happens in season 3, is the short answer. Keep in mind, I said that the second season would end roughly in the early 80s. I think season 3 should start around the same time, though obviously after the ending of the second season. And I imagine Miles Morales being particularly affected by a lot of the inner city policies that will have been implemented at the time by the Reagan administration. And as such, he would perhaps still be, he would be a smart kid, but not as happy-go-lucky. I think he would, more or less be angry or resentful of all the things happening around him and all the ways in which his life becomes becomes a little bit of a mess. And then in that entire mess, he also gets bitten by a radioactive spider and has these new abilities that he has to deal with. But I imagine him dealing with them in the sense that he is using them, and he's using them in order to become a more nightmarish or more horror-bound Spider-Man, someone who has less qualms about being brutal. And I imagine it would be Peter who figures out that that it is one of his students who actually who is going through that, and goes out to confront him. Maybe not physically, but maybe not physically, at least not initially. But he wants to get him on the straight and narrow and convince him to either give up his anger or use his anger in a more constructive way. And and to that end, I see him being somewhat of an active mentor figure to Miles until either the half point of the season or the last third of the third season, when he gives up the Spider-Man mantle entirely, because he will have become convinced that Miles's head is on right, and that his heart is in the right place, and that he knows what it is that he should do as Spider-Man. And I imagine that the two of them throughout this season would perhaps face off more team-ups, maybe another Sinister Six variation, maybe even new villains. I haven't really mapped this part of the season out, but I just know that this is the this is the trajectory I kind of want this to go down. And yeah, that was as I've already stated, my my suggestion for what a new Spider-Man animated series should look like. I hope it was interesting to you. If it was, well then please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the idea behind this video or to my implementation of it, that is what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where I primarily talk about book-related and literature topics, a link to which you can find in the description down below. Right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. And yeah, check out the book channel if you want to see me talk about books and literature. If you want to hear my thoughts on a variety of other topics, then I suggest you stay on this channel and go through my extensive backlog of either series suggestions or movie rewrites or video game reviews or any kind of review, even political commentary occasionally. I really have a huge, sizable, really grab bag of everything in the backlog of this channel. If none of what I've said so far interests you, then I suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was it for me. So until next time, I have been the One Take Man.